Welcome to FACT's webinar called Journey to Grass Milk, 100% Grass-Fed Dairy Production, presented by Kevin Mahalko. This webinar is hosted by Food Animal Concerns Trust, or FACT, and I am Larissa McKenna, FACT's Humane Farming Program Director. I'll be moderating the webinar this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. It is certainly my pleasure to have you all here. So Food Animal Concerns Trust, we are a national nonprofit organization. We're headquartered in Chicago, and we promote the safe and humane production of meat, milk, and eggs. I direct FACT's Humane Farming Program. There's a photo of me, put a name to a face to a voice, and we provide a number of opportunities for livestock and poultry farmers. As many of you may know, we are currently accepting applications for our Fund to Farmer grants, which are due December 4th. In addition to our grants, we facilitate peer-to-peer farmer education to increase the number of animals that are raised humanely in our country. This webinar is part of our Humane Farming webinar series. And so I encourage you to visit our website to learn more about our farmer services, to apply for a grant, and to register for a future webinar. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our accomplished presenter, Kevin Mahalko. Kevin is an organic valley farmer in Wisconsin. His family's multi-generation dairy has 120 Holsteins with approximately 350 acres of permanent managed grasslands and hardwood forest. Kevin is also on the board of the River County Resource Conservation and Development Council. In addition, he's an educator with the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship Initiative and is an advisor for Grassworks. So I'm truly honored that Kevin is with us today to share his bounty of knowledge and expertise, and he'll be available to answer your questions later on in the webinar. So with that, I'm going to hand the virtual mic over to Kevin so that he may start his presentation. So Kevin, please take it away.
All right, well, good morning, Larissa, and thank you for hosting this webinar. I'm glad that everybody could join today. What I'm going to talk about is basically a farming journey that I've been on, and I've been a part of it with a lot of other farmers, and it's been a great thing to see actually moving a little bit away from the conventional mindset, learning a lot of new things, learning about grazing, learning about organic, and really putting that together to come up with I think what a lot of us are so happy to be part of this grass milk revolution in a lot of ways. A lot of grass-fed products out there, really healthy, really a growing market, and it's something we're very happy to be a part of. I just wanted to highlight a few things. Aside from farming, I do work a lot in education, and we're looking at a lot of different ways to get either existing farmers to be able to transition to things like organic farming, rotational grazing, and also looking at ways to bring the future younger generation in, or people who are transitioning from another career, like through the dairy grazing apprenticeship. So those are very recent developments, and say in the last 10 to about 25 years of where we've seen organic and grazing really grow and intersect here at a very successful point. And also, just to highlight about Grassworks, we'll talk a bit about that. They're the Wisconsin State membership organization of farmers, grazers, all types of livestock, really looking at educational efforts. We do a state grazing conference every year in January and February, and it's really, I encourage everybody to look at these different organizations for some good input, good connections, and really contacting a lot of other good farmers. The picture on there is actually about a little over 10 years ago now, where we had been, obviously focused on grass. But at that point, had been very interested in going to organic, and it took me about 9 years personally to go from learning about organic to basically becoming an organic farmer, incorporating our grazing. So very nice learning process. There were a lot of good people out there, and I just encourage everybody to get to different events like pasture walks and conferences and that type of thing to network. If we go to the next slide. I want to just give an overview of our farm. We've been basically a multi-generational farm, but it's not necessarily been a continuous through the generations. People have obviously, we've gone through many farming cycles in our country. We have a vast, kind of, I'd like to say, a pretty good background. My mother's side, I think, started farming in the United States in the early 1800s in Wisconsin, and just saw a lot of development from, the time of basically wilderness to, they just saw different cycles. Like at one time Wisconsin was very big on wheat and just overdid it to the point where soils were depleted, and actually the saving grace for Wisconsin was to bring livestock, get dairy cows out on that landscape, and providing a good crop rotation, getting the manure cycling, get our biology back and working. So we had a much healthier, productive system. So that's what I'd like to really look at, is that we're generational and we're regenerative type of farming. On my dad's side too, he came in before the turn of the 1900. They'd come from kind of a traditional grazing culture in Austria, Hungary, and it was very much multi-species grazing. It's really a tradition in a lot of the mountain areas of Europe, especially, and it's just very interesting to see how that's now kind of cycled back around, where I'd say through the post-World War II time, American agriculture got very invested in the chemical and monoculture, and it still is, obviously, but I think we see a lot of movement now that we're gonna try to improve on that situation. So on the next slide, let's see here. This is a picture of basically what we're doing with the cows today. This is something we probably wouldn't even have done when we started grazing. Grazing a lot taller sward. So the way I would say it, when we started grazing, the theory was like go out there, graze when it's 8 to 12 inches tall, and try to do like 5 or 6 rotations a year. So it was kind of a rapid cycle on a little bit less complete forage, in my opinion. So what we've really been gearing toward now is getting to where we have multi-species, much more biodiverse pasture. We want to have a good mix of legumes and grass. We're not afraid to let it go taller. So what that really helps is the many cycles that we work with in the farming dynamic. We have the water cycle, the mineral cycle, carbon cycle, and all of that functions better when we have more mature plants, getting our root systems better developed, and really providing like a complete nutrition for the animals. So that's the picture of the dairy cows, and that's basically what they eat. We supplement just a small amount of mineral in the barn in the summer, but most days they won't even eat it. So it's really, once we get that good legume, forb, and grass mix, we have a really complete diet for these cows. Next slide. Larissa, I can't advance these myself.
Yes, Kevin, that's fine. You are on the organic valley table. slide.
Okay.
I actually wanted to just give a shout out to anyone that's having audio issues. Especially those of you that might be in rural areas, the one solution if you are having your audio cut out would be to call in on your phone. I've been told that that works a lot better. And the recording of this video will be available later. It seems to be pretty smooth. For me, so if you are having audio issues, it might be a function of your internet. So just put that out there. Okay, so I'm going to go back on mute, Kevin, and you can continue on with the Organic Valley table.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to spend a little time through the presentation, really, just highlighting how meaningful it is for us to be a part of Organic Valley. Just an excellent co-op. It's got over 2,000 farm members now, and I'm very happy to go around the country or around the world, basically promoting the products that we have and basically the farms that are a part of the co-op. So to me, it's been an absolute dream to be kind of working as I grew up. I graduated high school in '89, and that was as a younger kid, growing up through the farm crisis of the '80s. And basically, the whole line from everybody was, you're crazy if you think you're going to have a future farming. So I just see on so many levels, like the local food movement, the CSAs, just people getting behind the organic market, the grass-fed markets. That's really kept us, excited, interested, and basically able to continue with our farming traditions. So very much happy to get out there and talk with the public and other farmers. Next slide. And if I could do a check, can everybody hear me pretty well? I do have a slight amount of feedback in my phone.
I hear some kind of background noise once in a while, just like I guess it would be feedback, but I can still hear your voice pretty well, Kevin.
Okay, that's good. Okay, the next slide I'm not seeing.
It's the dairy grazing apprenticeship slide.
Okay. With dairy grazing apprenticeship, what I want to highlight there is this is a pretty recent development. I've been happy to be a part of this since the inception, the discussion phase, and we've had some really good leaders that got the dairy grazing apprenticeship up and running. So we have in Wisconsin many farms now that have actually had people come through as apprentices and now are basically owning their own farm or managing, and having a career in dairy. So that's just so incredibly crucial to me. It's really providing a kind of a structured, formal way that we can transfer the knowledge from one generation of farmers to the other, and really set the groundwork so that the apprentice gains all the business skills, the management skills, and really the networking that's needed to put in place a really successful grazing farm. So the contact info is on there if you're interested. On the next slide, a couple of the unique aspects of it is that it is it's a structured 2-year program. We work with universities and technical colleges to get our curriculum. We have basically a guidebook, job book, where we go through all these different aspects of everything that we could think of as a grazing, of the grazers that put this together. What is it that we think people need to know? So it is a very step-by-step technical, as well as a very personal level of learning of actually being on somebody's farm and learning from them. I think on the next slide we have GrassWorks.
Correct.
That's just not up on my screen yet. But anyways, like with Grassworks, that's another. That's a farmer organization that I'd highly recommend everybody look into. It's founded by grazing farmers. I remember at the time of the founding, I was reading about this in the farm papers and talking with other neighbors who were getting involved, and wow, just for me, it was just a great group of people to get to learn, to get to know. Basically, setting up a conference for farmers on that first one, and have 2-3 days where you have all types of livestock grazers come in and tell about what works on their on their operation, and that's really so highly valuable to basically get it firsthand, what's worked, so that we don't have to make like huge investments in time and money on something that might not work as well. But it also kind of provides a way that we can look at things and just think, wow, that's really an interesting idea. Maybe we should try that. So it's really been a great organization to be a part of. For my end here, I'm not seeing the pictures anymore. I'm going to actually pull up my PowerPoint.
Yes, we're on the managed grazing, linking food, people, animals, and the environment. I think it's still under the Grassworks page or section.
Now, what I want to look at on this slide here is that we're looking at all the basically so many facets of grazing that I find so valuable. We look at the grass-covered landscape, really restoring a lot of the natural or native cover. We look on where we have the cows, the chickens, the grass, the whole recycling and interconnected species dependency. Another photo on that slide is a grazer out working with the herd, moving the cows. That gets to basically where the cow and the people are working together. They basically, with my cows, as any grazer will find out, when you go out there, they're going to get to know you and know your patterns. They know that they're going to get fed, and you're a good caretaker, and they become just like you can basically lead the cows everywhere. You don't have to push them. We look at the omega-3. We can provide omega-3 without having to take these pills. Let's have it in a good, nutritious food, through the milk, meat, cheese, eggs, whatever grass-fed production we might look at. Another aspect of that slide is looking at the whole plant growth curve interaction. We see the plant at the immature stage moving up through the production stages here. So we have this intersection of where we have good vegetative growth and the number of days that it's been growing, and then the forage quality. So as a grazer, it's very important that we monitor our fields all the time, and we always try to keep in this nice area where we have the maximum amount of growth, carbon cycling, nutrients, providing good nutrition for the animals, and where we can keep this whole cycle going through the majority of our grazing season. Other pictures, a little bit of the food aspect, the award-winning cheeses that some of our state grazers have come up with. The different species here, sheep, and then looking also like at the bottom row, some of the good environmental benefits, like looking at caretaking of streams, having the proper stream crossings, getting the fish back into good health, and actually where grazing and good wildlife management go hand in hand. So we're not having the cattle in a stream for 30 days in a row. They might just be there one day, trim the grass and actually provide a good environment for the fish. Also, we're looking at the whole, the all natural, organic, fresh, grass-fed market out there, which, consumers can access at a lot of different levels now, from farmers markets to the, just really huge expansion on the retail level. Other things too, the grassland birds. On our farm we've had, several times when we've had university students out to do a ornithology assessment, and really just seeing birds that they haven't seen in any other field trips. So we have, right in my area, we have kind of a luxury of having our farm and a neighbor that's kitty corner and a fair amount of grassland right around us. So we have seen a really nice increase in these kind of more rare grassland birds. And then too, in the last corner there is again cattle managing a stream bank, and we've actually have on board of Grassworks one of our DNR fisheries managers in Wisconsin, who is really a huge advocate of getting trout streams restored through managed grazing. All right, the next slide shows our cows, probably on about the peak of the year. This is September. One thing I want to just highlight here, this is a mix that we actually developed, looking at some of the best grasses that we could find, from America through Europe. So a lot of cool season varieties and highly palatable, high energy and high nutrient dense type species. So in that particular field, when I planted, I did a mix of about 20 plus different either varieties or types of grass, and clover and legumes and forbs. So what has been typical on our farm is that we're what we call like a graze what grows type management, where we had basically old hay fields that we started grazing, and just over the years we had really nice pasturing develop. Well, I do these plantings on areas that we might outwinter cows, or we might want to interseed, or even improve it even more. So we can do a lot of this with no-till planters, and even just broadcasting seed on an area where cows might have had some hoof marks, and they can work that seed right into the soil seed bank. On the next slide, this is where we can talk a little bit about the technical aspects of the grass milk program, part of Organic Valley. Not to be exclusive here, because there are several other players in the grass, like the grass-based milk market. And as a part of that, we've actually been working together to come up with some good standards. So within Organic Valley, we're looking at 100% grass-fed milk. So we have a good internal program that was developed, by the farmers, by the grazers, and the management too, to look at a lot of the best practices that we can do. So the whole thing about grass milk is we're pushing it beyond the minimal requirements and going to the absolute max that we can on pasture. We're looking at, on the next slide, like the benefits that we're trying to get out of the grass-based production. Number one is the health. So that can be the health of the people that are consuming the products, and the health of the cows. So on this highly lush and diverse pasture, we're looking at milk that has like higher levels of naturally occurring omega-3, less of the omega-6, and more of the conjugated linoleic acid and calcium. So another interesting aspect of it is that depending on our plant species varieties out there, it affects the taste. So we're looking at coming up with a good combination that promotes a good just a good natural pasture taste. So, things that we'd want to avoid are like, leeks. Leeks are kind of an onion-like plant. Maybe like garlic in a pasture or whatever. Just avoid cows eating those types of plants that might give an off flavor. So I think when we have this forage that's grown well in a grass-based system, we look at bricks, which is an indication of sugar content. Very much like vegetable growers would be looking at. So just kind of look at it as similar to a vine-ripened tomato that's really tasty, and that's the type of grass pasture that we want to have for our cows. And I guess too, we've talked about this, but the whole mission, why are we doing this? It's really another thing that a lot of farmers, a lot of the public has been asking for, and I think that whole intersection of what farmers can do and what the consumer wants, is really providing us an avenue to have another good practice out there that I think can just grow, from where it's at, and get more and more farmers doing grass type farming. These are a couple of technical standards from a farmer aspect. So the cows eat no grain, so that means no corn, no soybeans, and on top of that, even with small grains, if you grow a crop like oats or triticale or wheat, that needs to be grazed, prior to that being like a seed, like a hard seed on that plant. So it's really like hitting all of these plants at the peak of their quality before they go to seed. The priority is pasture, so the cows are going to get as much as we can possibly provide of feed, off of pasture throughout the entire grazing season. So in our farm we've been grazing since April. We've been pretty much 100% pasture up until about a week ago. So now we've got as we go into winter, we've been below freezing several days in a row. We still have some very good pasture left, but we also supplement good quality hay with that. And that hay is done in a way to, have the harvest efficiency and speed and everything to really replicate pasture throughout the winter feeding season. So another part of the standards is that we have animal health is very much looked at. So the farmer needs to be very well versed in, being able to assess the cows, the cattle. What are they seeing? Are they in good body condition? Do they walk well? Do they look alert, happy? All of these aspects we have to look at every single day. And as we also have requirements that we have veterinary, oversight, which I would kind of look at that more as like a partnership. So several of the different practices that we do, with veterinarians are looking at, like the reproductive health of the cows, where they're at on that. Kind of assessing, they can assess nutrition, body condition, and come in and, if we have any animals that do get sick, then we obviously have somebody to, that could help in an emergency. And I think in general we've seen that animal health really gets so much better with our grazing practices that we don't have a lot of these kind of typical veterinary issues that you see. So like most of our cows that calve this year, we haven't had to have any assistance from a vet. The cows are bred to have the genetics where they can, have a calf easily, and having a good diet and being fed well. They just really are. It's a very easy process for the cows. When we look at some of the no's that we have, with organic and grass fed, we're looking at no antibiotics, no hormones, no GMO type, no GMO plants whatsoever. So that's organic grass fed, as far as what we will not allow. And then we have, like, as part of the co-op, we have a representative from the co-op, a regional field manager will come out and do a kind of an above and beyond audit of what the cows look like, what the pastures look like, and just get an assessment of everything that's going on the farm. Next slide too. We're looking again at the cows on this happens to be like a little test plot we have. We'd set up for some university trials. Looking at what we could do with different types of fertility inputs on the soil, and different seeding rates or different mixes that we put out there. So what what we want to do is really push forward like the productivity, the quality, and just making it the best type of pasture that we can possibly feed these cows. For the farm end of it, transitioning to grass milk, if you're already an organic farmer and looking to do this within Organic Valley, we have a 60-day transition of no grain. All purchased animals must also meet that 60 days. And we have to have good body condition on cows at all times and adequate pasture and high-quality forage at all times. This is a little kind of a, like where our farm was at about a month ago. So as the leaves are already falling off the trees, a lot of the annual type crops like corn or beans are, basically drying down and getting ready for harvest. We still have an incredibly lush growing pasture sward out here. So give you an idea there again, that's where I like to be in like this 15-inch height, and high density. So that every time a cow, puts their, muzzle down to eat, they can take in, a really good amount of forage with every bite that they're taking. So what it does is it allows them to spend their time the most efficiently. They can, get, eat, get filled up really quickly, and have a lot of time to rest. I have another slide here. This shows this was the number of farms that are involved with grass milk back, I think in the spring. So at that time, 139 farms spread out across the country now, and it's really been very interesting to see. We get a nice price premium, and then we put $1 toward soil improvement on our farm. Say, Larissa, I'm wondering if are there any questions that we might want to take a break here and do that a bit, or?
Sure, we can take a pause for questions. Let me see if there have any that have come in. Mostly the comments have been about the audio. I think people had some issues, but it sounds, hopefully those have been corrected. If anyone does have a question that they'd like to raise at this point, we can take a moment or two. Okay, we do have a question about, does grass milk cost more to produce than if you use some grain?
Yes, that is one of the, I think one of the things that, why there is a premium, for the grass milk. It does, I would say we've lost a little bit of production, but when we balance that out in our whole cost structure, it actually, it's definitely a net benefit to go to the grazing system. And I think we got into a really, kind of looking at a whole deep discussion of subsidized type farming. If we had just a completely level playing field, no subsidies, no ethanol mandates and that type of thing, I think you'd see that, the overall the grazing type of production is very competitive cost-wise, even even in our current market.
Thank you for that. So another question is, how has your soil improved as a result of implementing these practices, and how have you been measuring soil health?
I have a few slides on that, and it's really, we do our soil testing every 3 years, and we've been able to watch, different factors like organic matter, improve over time. And also just, we developed a soil health testing kit in the state of Wisconsin, for field assessment. Let's go out. You can do things like, take a shovel of soil, dig in, look at it, look at the structure. Does it have a good aggregate structure like cottage cheese, or does it have more of a compacted plated structure? So a lot of what we see is when we have these really healthy root systems, the roots are really making that soil very aerated, and really breaks up compaction, lets that water, gives a lot of channels for water to infiltrate into the soil, and really also through the whole different grazing a little bit taller, we have residual left over that becomes a carbon source, a feed source for the earthworms. And you look at the things like manure that go directly back to the land. We have all of our recycling insects like dung beetles, flies, that type of thing that are recycling that manure right back in within probably about 25 days. So we always have a clean field when we come back into our next pasture 30 to 40 days later.
Thank you. So I'm going to take one more question at this point, and then we'll keep going with the presentation.
Okay.
So the question is, I was pleasantly surprised to see how diverse your pastures are. Why did you choose to have so many species, and is it difficult to manage for quality with so many species that must mature at different rates?
Yeah, what I find is that having diversity really helps throughout the whole year, because in the springtime we definitely see a certain profile of plants that are more adapted to early growth, and realistically having that diversity out there helps fill the gaps. Like say if it gets hot, we have other plants that do better in hot weather that can come up to the forefront in the summer. So it is very tricky in a lot of ways to manage a multi-species. I think as much as anything is just not overgrazing, not taking too much leaf off of the plant, so that I always want to build a really healthy root structure before I graze. But then when I go out there to graze it, leave some plant material and don't let them come back and take a second bite, because that's where you start really tapping too much into the root reserve and hurting the plants.
Great.
And I think also, just technically, it probably is going to require interseeding or doing no-till on a probably a yearly basis if you really want to push it to the maximum. One other aspect of it I should say, we always let every pasture at least once a year go to 60 days, between grazings. So what that gives us is an opportunity for the clover to go to have viable seed. A lot of the grasses, got good productive seed they produce. So that goes right back into the soil bank, so that if we have a bare spot or cattle impact, we always have seed out there that will come through. Okay, I'm on it shows the crop grass milk standard slide.
Yes.
On my screen.
And I
think we went through that.
Okay, I would say we probably have about 10 minutes more of presentation.
Okay. We'll try to move quickly here. Okay. The next slide that I have is showing basically our haying operation. So we obviously graze the cows, but we have our enough land where what the cows can't graze in the summertime, we obviously have to be making our winter feed. So we really focus on having a high speed haying operation where we cut it, have it cure, and then bale it as fast as we can, so that we preserve as many nutrients as we can. I think from what I've seen, the highest speed way that we do it, we chop our own feed for a silo, which it can be okay, but it's not quite as good as round baling for baleage. But I think our best one is where we do a lot of big square bales, so that generally tends to produce the higher quality hay on our farm. Challenges that we have as a farmer, we have to know our dry matter intake of the cows. We have to know our forage quality, so we test that. We test our soil, and we're looking obviously at planting good species out there for the both hay and pasture. Genetics of the herd is very important. We've selected over the years. We've got Holsteins, but they're probably not your typical tall dairy World Dairy Expo type Holstein. These are much more full-bodied, efficient cows. So then we look at also are we going to need to add supplemental forage at different times, and do we need to provide minerals to them? The next slide shows you can get into the detail on this, but it shows energy requirements that the cows have. We have number one, they have to maintain their physical body condition. They weigh 1,300 pounds in general. There's energy that goes into producing the milk. There's energy that goes into them walking around doing a lot of different activities depending on how hilly or how far they have to walk. Pregnancy takes energy, to extra energy for a pregnant cow. And we just look at that balance. So here again is another sward where this is a field that I think is almost ideal. We have a really good mix of legume out there. In this particular field, we haven't had to fertilize for about 20 years. So it's just got, and we've actually verified by the soil testing that things are looking good across the board for available nutrients. Next slide shows we have a pretty good record. We've done a lot of DHI testing over the years. Where we were at when we were doing conventional grazing, where we were at in the transition to organic. Straight organic with about 6 pounds of grain, and then now the grass, their production since we did grass milk. This is kind of a highlight of what we can say from science about organic food. It looks like nutrient density is higher across a lot of the testing that's done. We see a lot fewer toxic metals in the food, and then the use of pesticides or residues is much less. We also have a lot of science that shows the omega-3, omega-6, and CLA testing, and the grass milk is showing to have the most beneficial numbers of all of those. We look at our health is a good balance of exercise, stress reduction, and nutrition. So we want to get to a thing where we have our bodies working properly, exercising, and get a diet that's not promoting inflammation and cardiovascular trouble. We look at a lot of the benefits that science or medical field is looking at. Higher omega-3s prevent a lot of the heart issues, depression, cancer. It looks like we could get better memory and brain development, and just overall better cell regeneration and that type of thing, in this type of diet. On our farm, I like to highlight that we do holistic management. I'm not sure if that one's up on the screen, but and I'm just looking at. Okay, I think, Larissa, what happened here is that more slides than what I thought came through to you. But holistic management is just kind of it's a way to look at many factors, like economic, societal, environmental, and the type of things that you value in your business and your life. So that's been a very good thing to be a part of that learning circle with that. Next slide.
It's called Why Graze.
Okay, some of the things of why we're grazing. As far as the animal health benefits, improved cow comfort. They're out on the field. They're very comfortable out there. They have lower stress, and we've pretty much proven they have better lifespan too. The next slide shows the whole system that we're working with. The plants, the animals, and this is a lot of the unseen system that's working in our soils. Working with our, more on a microscopic level. So what I'd like to look at is I think in a lot of ways, like promoting a lot of soil life out there, getting a lot of these animal and microscopic communities, functioning at a much higher level. If we look at history, this is a picture of what we had, not in a very distant past either. Just huge animals that were out on our landscape, and I think, now, like the future impact of grazing, what we have to replicate a lot of that natural environment is our cattle, and our lives, basically our grazing livestock could really replicate a lot of what needs to be done to get nature functioning as well as we can. We look at what has happened. When we stripped away our grassland, we had the pictures. This is from the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. But a lot of this is still happening even now. We've seen a lot of droughts, a lot of fire cycles, and this is a picture of like what they call the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. So basically, a lot of this, especially nitrogen runoff, is going right into the, basically leaching through our system into groundwater and into the Gulf. And I think we've learned enough now where we can do a lot of farming practices that'll turn that around. The next picture shows a lot of the sediment loss. This is just strictly when we don't have enough cover and we have bad soil and soil structure. We get a lot of that soil heading right out into the oceans. Let's see here. I'm on a University of Wisconsin slide here that they've done almost a 25-year study, I think it is so far. But looking at across all these different farming systems, that's a net ecosystem carbon balance, and finding out that the managed rotationally grazed sites lost significantly less carbon in the first year versus all other types of farming, and in the second year and beyond was the one that had a positive impact on the net ecosystem carbon balance. So when we hear about things like climate change and whether people will accept that or not, I think the grazing system can really improve the landscape out there and provides a lot of good numbers of being able to turn this whole balance to the positive. Let's see here. I have a picture here of soil. Looking at where we just basically took a shovel and dug up our soil. And what I want to highlight is that, through all this plant action, we've actually seen the color change in the soil. The soil structure is better. And we look at the next slide, how did nature make all that soil in the first place? Well, you think about, the millions of bison that used to, run across the prairie. It's been a long history of animals, both at the large scale along with, right down to the microscopic level, turning rock into soil. So we can really jumpstart and improve that, using our cattle. I have a data slide showing a soil test on our farm, and just across the board, we've got our pH in the right balance, like about a 6.7 to about 6.9. our organic matter has improved like from about a 2.5 up to like in the 4.5 to 5s. And we have pretty much all the nutrients available for our grazing. One thing we've done on our farm is a lot of different field days. Here we dug a soil pit and just looking at the whole profile, looking at how deep the root structures go, looking at like soil aggregation, like how the soil particles hold together in water suspension. A lot of these different testing things that we do now. One thing I want to say about manure that's out on pasture, a lot of people might have concerns about that. I have a picture here of a cow pie that was basically in the lowest spot on our farm that had like about 3 feet of water running over it when we had our snow melt in the spring. But this really shows that, number one, the nutrients all stayed there, and what comes right from our manure is a lot of our seed bank. So that's new clover, new legumes. So we've turned what in a lot of farming is like a negative. We have a lot of issues with manure runoff and spills and leaching and that type of thing. Well, nature has a pretty good solution, just in the structure and in the way a cow pie functions in nature. This is where we dug up a bunch of different soil profiles, like looking at root mass, and really how that's compared, like on different soil, the same exact soils but under different management. And then, like during that field day, we had a heavy downpour. This picture shows like a heavy rain, where we had about an inch and a half of rain just in about 10 minutes, which we get quite a bit of nowadays. And we went back to those samples, and we had basically on the right side, we see that really dark, rich, aggregated grassland soil. And right next to it, we have the soil from the cornfield. That's the same exact scientific soil type, but just the way it's managed, you can see that it's just really has almost no life left in that soil. So we want to restore that carbon and get that color back and get a lot of living things back in that soil. The next picture we have. A lot of what we have in our farm for our haying equipment and our productivity, I would say. We're getting pretty good yields out there. Where we had, like off of this 7-acre field, about 50 of these 5x6 round bales. So, as organic farmers, as grazers, we need to compete with any of the top production systems in the world, and I think we can do that. One thing that's really helpful is to have that grazing community out there. Get out, work with other farmers. Get to pasture walks. Try to do as much planning as you can in your operation, and look at what you can expect for production, so you can match the cattle to the landscape that you have, and be able to adjust for a lot of the changing conditions. This is a little bit of a looking at what happens, with different, grazing heights. If you don't leave any leaf left, you basically keep losing on roots. That's slide 53. Larissa, do we have, 5 minutes, or?
Sure, we can do another 5 minutes of presentation, and then we'll take 5 minutes of questions. We'll be running over a little bit if folks don't mind sticking it out. That'd be great to hear a little bit more.
Okay. I'm going to have you go to, I think it's slide 55. So this shows, our, through the seasons, we're obviously getting into winter, but, we want to have the cows out there on the landscape, and, they can still eat, even when there's some snow on the ground. The next slide shows our, some of our most important tools that we have on the grazing farm, which is an ATV, which makes everything very flexible. We can, take our fence, pretty much put it up, build it anywhere we want, I've always been lucky to have a good farm dog too, so that really helps to reduce the stress. They're just definitely a helping hand out there in every situation. The one thing too, I would say with the with the cows, we get them tame enough where we can basically go and pet most of the cows out in the field. So the animal handling, the lessening of stress, all of that makes it much easier to work with the cows out on the land. The next picture I want to go to is it shows outwintering, showing some of the laneways and fencing that we set up to do the outwintering. And just the slide 59 just shows like the cows out there in the snow, eating some good quality hay. Slide 60, we can preset a lot of bales, take it out there, have it set up. The cows will walk back to the barn for water. They have different wind breaks. Just a good clean environment for them in the wintertime too. Some days, like in this particular day, it was about 30 below at the peak of the morning. So I went out and I was checking on them, I think, when it was probably in the well below zero. The next slide, is one I really would like to highlight. It shows like corralling dairy cows to enhance manure management. That's a slide I'd encourage people to look up on USDA ARS. Showing that the manure from the grazing animals, that are out on the landscape during the winter time, all that nutrient pretty much stays and goes into the soil. It's not getting leached or lost to the atmosphere. So we're very much looking at trying to have a self-contained farm where we don't have to bring nutrients on, and we're recycling and building our nutrients as we go. Slide number 63, it shows like that outwintering area about a month after the cows have been off in the spring, and it just regenerating and getting our new plant growth out there. Slide 64, every farm has to do this, and it's weed management. One thing that we've had really have seen, like as we get very dense pasture, we'd have very less weed issues. But we always this is a picture of my dad. We go out there along our fence lines, and we always pick the thistles or kind of the different weeds that we don't like. We pick them out and either compost them or possibly burn them. So we just have very few weeds on an organic grazing farm. 66, we have a picture of the calves out there. They're basically, this is a little bit after they're weaned off of milk, but they go out there. They have really a good mix of, especially want to put them on a high forb type pasture where they get better minerals. So we keep a nice area for the calves. The next slide, just kind of a summary of holistic management. Looking at a big picture approach to our decisions. Grazing is a fundamental tool on our farm. We're always looking at monitoring results. We're watching, how things are growing, how the cattle respond, and we're always looking at being flexible and able and willing to change. Number 68, we're showing like our pasture subdivision. Every level that you can increase your pasture management, will give you much better production on the land. So what I see a lot of is, people will just put cattle or livestock out on a large area and not do the management, and that just isn't as productive as it could be. Number 69 is just showing, some of the insects that we utilize to cycle that manure on our farm through the soil profile. Our soil testing, again, we, just every 3 years we're looking at that. Slide 72, if we look at our farming equipment, we do have a mix of, some newer hay tools, but we also have, older tractors. So this is just kind of a highlight that, you don't necessarily have to invest in multi-million-dollar, lines of machinery to do a grazing farm. You can, what we utilize, where we don't harvest our own with chopping equipment, we can hire, some people to come in. So typically, like the baler operation, we'll do the cutting, the raking, and the hay wrapping. So we can have somebody come in and do the high-speed baling. 73, that's just kind of a highlight of, that was an area that was out wintered. This is a year after, or the following fall. Just really back into where we've got our nutrients spread out, and really a nice pasture out of all that. 76. Yeah, just like I've got a picture here on slide 76. This is kind of like the view of European grazing that I've seen. It's a beautiful green landscape, but we start looking a little deeper on this. We don't have enough cattle out there. If you look on the hillsides, you can see like, cow paths and erosion and that type of thing. So what I like to highlight on this slide, even in, cultures or where it looks like a nice setup, there's always room for improvement. So, learning how to work with polywire, having cattle on just at the right time and moving them, just constant movement, that promotes really good management. So I'm going to finish up here slide 77 is showing the organic pasture rule. So at a minimum, they requiring 30% dry matter from pasture the whole grazing season. In about 120 days per year, we want to have year-round access for all animals to the outdoors, have proper shade, shelter, exercise, looking at fresh air, clean water, good sunlight, and have everything that's suitable to the species, stage of life, climate, and environment. So that's the minimum for organic, and we're really trying to push it, to get to the maximum. A highlight we've had on our farm is we've been able to have a lot of people come out for field days, like classes, different farmer groups, and it's really excellent to interact and just kind of show people what there is with the pasturing and grazing systems. So 79, sometimes you can graze even if sometimes it feels like you're herding cats. So it's a lot. There is a lot to learn. A lot more than I ever thought when I started out, but it's very much a fun process. And my last slide, I just have some contacts here. If you ever want to get a hold of me or get a hold of our Wisconsin grazing contacts, these are some really great resources. All right, thank you, Larissa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. That was really excellent. So much information, and I know that there are some questions that started rolling in. So I'm going to read them out loud. We'll take a couple of them, and if we don't get to your question right now, just due to time, you certainly can follow up with Kevin or me at offline. So let me see what I can do. So we have a question. After you switched to 100% grass, what changes did you make to get the flavors you preferred? Anything done more recently?
I would say since we went to the whole, to the grass milk, we've definitely planted, we've had more of an emphasis on legumes. So, especially red and white clover. So we typically, red clover persists for about 3 years after the germination stage. So I think you either have to have a really good seed bank of red clover or, keep planting it, as needed. So the legumes, definitely, I've kind of watched that and observed, during drought years where the grazers have say like a 35-40% legume content, it withstands a drought much better. So it's just really, it's just a sweet, like a higher sugar plant. and something we want to have in our mix.
All right. Another question, are you able to stack enterprises like pastured poultry behind the cattle?
I personally haven't taken the time to do that. I know we have grown like chickens for meat production, but we definitely have in our networks a lot of farmers that are have like chicken tractors, or I guess for me I'm pretty much managing the cows myself, so I've got my hands full.
Okay, I'll take two more questions and then we will we'll finish up. But how often are you moving your cattle, and how large of a paddock for your herd?
Okay. Yeah, to me this is, if can leave you with anything, this is what I emphasize the most. Like we're moving our cows a minimum of every 12 hours. So after every milking they have a new area. And even like you get a really hot day in the summer, or if you really want to push production, you can keep, give them a little bit more like throughout the day. So the cow is just like us, if there's something new, if there's like a reason to get up and, go sample another salad bar, that's what they want. So.
And the last question, I'm going to thank you for that, Kevin. Are the dairy groups and organizations that you posted on one of the previous slide, are they open to goat farmers?
Yeah, yes, they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like especially Grassworks, we have, we'll probably have a session. Excuse me. I'm sure we'll have a session related to goat farming.
Oh, at your conference?
Yes, at the Grassworks conference.
Excellent. Okay. So I know that we didn't get to everyone's question, but hopefully that we will continue to connect. I just have a couple of housekeeping items before we sign off this afternoon. So like I mentioned, a recording of this webinar will be available soon, along with the slides, the whole presentation, and as well. So it's going to be archived on our website, FACT website, and I'll also email it to all of you that registered, along with any of the links that Kevin mentioned throughout. Also, immediately after the webinar ends, you're going to be asked to complete a very, very short survey about your experience, and I truly value your feedback. So if you could share, your thoughts, just take a minute or two to complete the survey, that would be wonderful. Like I mentioned earlier, FACT is currently accepting applications for our Fund to Farmer grants due in December 4th, so a couple more weeks going. We're offering two types of grants this year. One is for projects that increase access to well-managed pasture, and a second for projects that would help help farmers attain one of 6 certifications. So I encourage you to check out our website to learn more and to apply. And of course, please join us for another webinar this winter. We have several already on the docket, and we'll be announcing more soon, hopefully. Kevin, do you have any parting thoughts to share before I close the webinar?
Well, Larissa, I just want to thank you, in fact, for inviting me. Today it's just been, I love to promote it. I think the biggest thing that I like to see is the farmers getting together at different events, especially on a pasture. So I see you have an upcoming one about pasture walks. That's where I learned an incredible amount, from our neighbors, from our, just seeing what they did, and it's just been great to see, a farm community that is so open and willing to help one another. And it's like, I want to have, excuse me, I want to have neighbors out here. I want to have a community. So I think we've, been very successful in helping restore that, and I appreciate your help in promoting that.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation and taking the time to answer all of our questions and put together such wonderful slides. And thank you to all of you in the audience for your attention and your interest in sticking around for the full presentation. It's certainly been my pleasure to host this webinar. I hope that you guys all enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and that we all connect again soon. Goodbye and take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.